The following is a Hoop Ball presentation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of DFS Today, presented by Hoop Ball. I am your host, David Menkov, on this wonderful evening. Getting ready to talk about the one-game showdown between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Golden State Warriors on Friday, May 21st. Another play-in tournament game, an elimination game at that. I am running this out solo. So for all the listeners out there, hopefully you won't get too sick of my voice after the end of this. So without further ado, let's dive into the all-important eight seeding game as the Memphis Grizzlies travel to take on the Golden State Warriors. The Grizzlies, of course, are coming off a nice victory in their last one, while the Warriors are really trying to stave off elimination. And we all know that the Warriors are motivated, and so are the Grizzlies. So this should come down to an absolute duel. As far as injuries are concerned on the Warriors side, we know Kelly Oubre Jr. is out. James Weissman is also out, and Damian Lee is questionable for this one. On the Grizzlies side, there are no significant injuries to report. They're actually relatively healthy for this matchup. So I think this is one of the more exciting elimination type of games, and we should be in line for a high-scoring affair based on what the line says. And the line's currently at 226.5, with the Warriors favored by 3.5 points as well. So that being said, this is going to be an interesting game on multiple levels. Where we're looking at a Warriors team that had a heartbroken game against LeBron. LeBron put up an absolute prayer that went in, and as everyone knows, in this new playoff format, that spelled the Warriors into this win or go home scenario. So, looking at some of the captain picks, it's really hard to not go straight to Steph Curry. Stephen Curry is definitely the alpha, the omega, and everything above for the Golden State Warriors. A relatively quiet performance in his last one against the Lakers, where he put up 37 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists to the tune of 50 fantasy points. I think this is one of the more locks for any captain picks. He's going to probably have significant ownership in the 60, 70, maybe even 80% range in that captain spot, and for good reason. He can do it all on the court. This is a type of opportunity, elimination type of format. I think he's going to go off potentially. He has obviously the potential to go off for 50, 55 points, real life points in this one, just given the importance of this game, and just given his hunger to bring the Warriors to the playoffs. So I think he's as good as any as a captain pick. However, there are some additional picks you can definitely look at. Looking at the Grizzlies side of the ball, that could be a nice contrarian play, but also will give you the opportunity to utilize your budget a little bit more when you're looking to fill out the utility spot. So Jonas Valanciunas is a great candidate. He's priced as the highest priced player on the Grizzlies in the captain spot at 15,000 versus Steph Curry, who's 17,100. So right there, you have a little over 2,000 in savings that you can utilize towards Jonas. And Jonas is coming off a season high 23 rebounds and 23 points to go along with it, and 3 blocks to the tune of 60 fantasy points. So, given the last game and given the fact that the Warriors just don't have a lot of inside presence right now with James Weissman out, Kevon Looney is an okay defender, but Jonas should absolutely eat early and often in this game. I think that this is a great opportunity for him to put up another monster type of double-double. I think this is to be a great chance to play him, and you'll get Jonas at lower ownership, significantly lower ownership. So that could really help Everyone listening who's trying to enter in a bunch of tournament lineups, I think Valanciunas is a fantastic pick. Um, but if you are going with Steph Curry, some of the guys that you can really help build around Steph, a lot of them are on the Warriors. They're just priced too good at this point. Starting with Jordan Poole, who's been getting some significant minutes now. He's starting to get more and more confident, coming off a relatively quiet performance against the Lakers, where he only had 16 fantasy points. But we've seen Jordan Poole start to get a little more confidence, especially when Steph Curry rested a few nights ago against the Pelicans. He went off 55 fantasy points. Now, I do not expect that kind of performance by any means, but Jordan Poole should be absolutely considered in your lineups. And at 5,400 in salary, that's a fantastic value option. The other guys I'm looking at are Juan Toscano Anderson, who recently just signed his contract, coming off a nice little 20-point fantasy effort. Again, not one of his best performances, but we've seen it throughout the season where if he gets enough minutes and if he's getting minutes in the high 20s, low 30s, Toscano Anderson should have no problem lighting up the scoreboard. So I think Juan Toscano is a great pick. And a guy, again, 5,800. You're looking for guys when you're looking at a utility spot, especially in these showdown lineups. You're looking for guys that can do a little bit of everything and that can provide that low tier value. And that's exactly what Toscano brings here. The other guy I'm looking at is probably going to be Kent Bazemore, 6,200. Again, price to move in that range of high 5,000, low 6K range. Kent Bazemore, another guy that when he gets opportunities, he can get steals, he can get blocks. Coming off a 5-steal game, in fact, against the Lakers in only 25 minutes. So you know that he can do a little bit of everything, and he does not need to necessarily score. And we're talking DFS, as all our listeners know, you need to find guys that can get you those additional value points, especially on DraftKings, where we know that these ancillary numbers are extremely important. Steals and blocks are worth $2 a point, 2 points. 2 points each, and that's exactly why a guy like Ken Bazemore should be considered and considered very often into your lineups. He's definitely going to be a guy that you can throw in there pretty confidently. And then the other guy I'm looking at is Andrew Wiggins, 8,200, coming off a pretty solid 29-point fantasy effort against the Lakers. A guy that we've seen, if he gets confidence, if he starts shooting well, he has the opportunity to go off. And we saw it especially in the game against Phoenix a few nights ago where he went off for 38 points and 53 fantasy points. So we know that Andrew Wiggins is a guy that is a number 2 scoring option right now on the Warriors, especially with Kelly Oubre Jr. out. Andrew Wiggins should have no problem getting as many shot attempts as you want. He put up 18 shot attempts against the Lakers. I expect a similar type of field goal outing from him as well. So I think he's a great pick, and I'm going to be looking at him considerably in lineups. Jaren Jackson Jr. is the only guy I'm really looking at besides Jonas Valanciunas on the Grizzlies, and I'll tell you why. Because he's a guy that he hasn't really been able to unleash his full potential since coming back from injury. He put up 26 fantasy points in the elimination game against the Spurs a couple of nights ago, and I like Jaren Jackson. I think with his block steals opportunity and with the ability to get some points, potentially get double-digit rebounds, which we know it's not one of his strong points in his game, but it's certainly an area which I think he can improve on. And against the Grizzlies, there will be plenty of rebounds to be had. And if Valanciunas is on the bench for whatever reason, Jaren Jackson Jr. should pick up the slack pretty easily, as a matter of fact. So he's a great pickup. There are other guys you can look at on the Memphis Grizzlies side, which, again, I'm not going to fault anyone from looking in that direction. It's all about finding guys when you're building these lineups in these showdown slates that are not necessarily going to be 80% owned or 70% owned. And that's where you start going into some of the additional pieces on the Grizzlies that might get overlooked, like Dylan Brooks, who is having a pretty fine stretch of games. by his standards and by any standards. Where in the last game against the Spurs, he put up 43 fantasy points, and his salary did not go up. It was 7,600 in that game. It's 7,600 again in this game. The game before that, against this very same Warriors team, he put up 30 fantasy points. In the game before that, he put up 49. So he's starting to get a little more consistent. We're still starting to see that scoring effort and the ability to light up the scoreboard and be that number one scoring option on the Memphis side. And they're going to need every ounce of his scoring ability in order to compete in this one against the Warriors. So I think Dylan Brooks is fantastic little play as well. You can also consider him for the captain spot, 11,400, but that's definitely more of a high risk, high reward type of situation there. So I'm not going to have too many shares in the captain spot for him. There are other guys you can really look at. I mean, John Morant is always someone that people consider in lineups, but looking at his last 5 games, at a salary of 9,400 regular in the utility spot, and at 14,100, I don't think he's necessarily going to be worth it in this battle. It's going to be a great battle between guards, between him and Steph Curry. It's just going to be very tough because I think he's going to have to really increase his efficiency from the field. In his last couple of games, he's barely been able to graze the 40% from the field mark. So he needs to pick that up. He's a guy that we've seen can flirt with triple doubles, and a guy that is probably again going to be a little bit lower owned than other guys on the Warriors side. So I love John Moran in this one. He's probably going to be again more of a tournament play, just given his price tag being the third most expensive captain pick in general. The other guys that we can really look at or take some look at are Draymond Green, 8,800 as a captain pick. We've seen it a few nights ago against the Suns. He put up a whopping 52 fantasy points. We've seen it early on in May. He was putting up 60 fantasy points in some games. So he's a guy that does not shy away from the spotlight, and a guy that's currently announced also as a side note as one of the finalists for Defensive Player of the Year. So we know he's going to bring the defensive stats. And in the last game against the Lakers, he put up 3 steals and 3 blocks. Just another ho-hum effort by Mr. Green, Mr. Draymond. And, it's quite an interesting path we can take with Draymond because you can probably fit him in to regular lineups as an additional piece, even if you have Steph Curry. And that might actually be a pretty strong play. Just to be able to squeeze them both into lineups, which you can because he's only priced at 8,800 as a utility play, which is why he's definitely going to be in consideration. I'm not going to have too much interest in some of the other smaller pieces like Kevon Looney, despite a 13 rebound, 2 block effort against the Lakers. I just don't foresee a similar type of outing against the Grizzlies. I think the Grizzlies just have too much size and too many skilled big men down low, where Kevon Looney is just not going to make as much of an impact in this game. So I'm not going to be looking at him too much, even though his salary is very much swallowable at 4,600. I just don't see that he's going to have too much of an impact here. And then also when we're considering guys, you might be tempted to go Grayson Allen or Desmond Bane. It's really hard to go in those directions just because these guys just don't get consistent playing time. They're all potential guards that can go off at any game. I just don't foresee this type of game, this type of playoff atmosphere, win or go home atmosphere. I just don't see either of them being too much in play in this game. And that's pretty much it. Just given the high scoring total I mentioned before and the fact that the Warriors are 3.5-point favorites, this should be an absolute another one of those definitely games to remember. And I think it's going to come down to the wire again. And like I said, we're definitely going to be looking at a heavy build into Steph Curry as a captain, and then definitely there are some pieces which I mentioned we can definitely look at building around. And that's pretty much it. I know that it's short and sweet, but that's that's just the name of the game during these play-in formats. And it's very exciting. It's a very exciting brand of basketball, and I think as fans, we're in for a treat in this one as well. Regardless of who wins, it's going to be a very interesting playoff this year. And these play-in tournament games are definitely an opportunity to get some casual fans as well involved. And from a DFS perspective, this is the perfect time to jump into DFS. Anyone who's been on the fence about jumping in, these are the type of games that are just going to be a great way to get your feet wet into the DFS game. So I hope everyone can do that. Awesome. And with that said, I just wanted to just wrap up and say that it's always a pleasure hopping on and jumping and going through these games. This is going to be a fantastic little card. As I mentioned, this game is going to start at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which I don't know if I mentioned earlier on the pod, and if I didn't, apologies. I'd like to thank Manscaped, as always, one of our sponsors, as well as MyBookie as well. Always looking at those two as great additions. Definitely consider those to our listeners as well. And you can find me on Twitter at dmank33. And I hope everyone is successful and takes down some big tournaments. All right, everyone. Take care.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.
For the ones who get going when the going gets tough, and the ones who know we're tougher together. For the Pathfinders breaking new ground, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry, as well as fast access to experts and 24/7 customer support. Because we know you have people depending on you, so you can always depend on us. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.